Hello, my name is Joseph Mealy. I am a doctoral candidate for organizational leadership at Adler University. This is my symposium presentation regarding technology to further reentry education for incarcerated people, with advisor Dr. Heather Irwin from the University of Iowa. Dr. Irwin and I met back in 2016. With this presentation, one of the questions was, what keeps you up at night? For me, back then, it was a question of technology and education for reentry education of people who are incarcerated. The reason why is that I have a family member who is incarcerated. And in conversations with that family member, came to the realization how inadequate education can be, or access to education can be, really across the board. In the particular institution where my family member was located, the people who are incarcerated, if they had an in-person instruction and the teacher decided not to teach that day or didn't want to answer the question or do whatever, the people who were incarcerated, the students, were really stuck and had no recourse. They couldn't ask for help from one of the guards. They couldn't, push it from the instructor, or they risked getting in trouble. So very limited power when there are people who are trying to seek and get education. Additionally, there was the inmate or the person who's incarcerated that was teaching reentry education was someone who was in for life. So the instructor for reentry education for this particular institution was someone who was never going to reenter society. And they were grabbing information and notes from those who were released and from research they were doing, whether it be through newspapers or what access to the internet they might have, but very limited resources. And honestly, the whole purpose of the prison system, in theory, is to rehabilitate and prepare those who are incarcerated to reenter society successfully. And clearly that wasn't being done. My background as a professional was learning and development and technology. So a lot of my programs that I've worked on have been with Fortune 500, 100 companies, really leveraging technology within the workplace to make the workplace better. Additionally, being an online graduate student, I've had the opportunity to experience online learning and even use it on my own tablet. So with that being said, um, we really connected on this level because when she was working with the Vera Institute, that overall organizational mission aligned with what my needs were, what my question was, and that is the Vera Institute's mission is to end overcriminalization and mass incarceration for people of color, immigrants, and people experiencing poverty. Dr. Uriel and myself identified together as social justice avengers. We're similar to the Marvel franchise because we're both Robert Downey Jr. fans. We are working as a team to find new team members to avenge injustice by working within the system, within systems of power, to create systemic change for the better and a more just society. So, with our shared question of how do we leverage education, our dialogue really kind of moved more into a concept of cognitive behavioral change to support the incarcerated person's transition back into society. So not just providing education on a collegiate level or vocational level, but also looking at how can we also develop the cognitive behavioral psychosocial skills that a person would need to reenter society and to be successful. While Dr. Irwin is working with University of Iowa's now Liberal Arts Beyond Bars program, founded in 2017. It led to the creation of a thriving academic community to provide people who are incarcerated with associate and bachelor's degrees. The first graduate occurred back in August of 2020. And then with the pandemic happening around that same period of time, that led to all educational shutdown within Iowa. And so, thankfully, to a grant provided by the Ascendium Education Group, Dr. Irwin and others within the Iowa community can work to plan and reintroduce education across the Iowa State prison system. Even though there's ongoing difficulties with the Department of Correction and how to get this accessed, she is working on that level for the state of Iowa. Which really leads me to the bigger point of my placement and my work, and that is to develop a white paper to look at how can we leverage technology, which does currently exist within the prison system, to improve education and have access to more universities like University of Scranton or an Adler or a Capella, who have online courses that currently exist and are active for everyday users. So how can we use technology to get access to these forms of education to people who are incarcerated? And additionally, not just again with the academic side of it, but also the social skills side. How can we provide education and training to help those who are incarcerated develop the right skills, whether it be social or understanding technology or understanding current politics or geopolitical events that are occurring in the world around them? How do we help them become ready for when they enter society to have the most seamless transition and step into roles and work and life to thrive and to be successful human beings? So this white paper is focusing on technology to further reentry education for incarcerated people. When incarcerated people are given the opportunity in the prison environment for growth and education, it informs the likelihood of their future success. And and so really how you treat people while incarcerated really is going to be a key determining factor in how they're going to engage when they are released. If they're treated irredeemable, chances for success are relatively small. If they're given the chance to develop social, academic, professional skills, and are treated as humans or even as scholars, then positive experiences are much more likely to follow, and success of not recidivizing is on the table. Now, to that end, access to technology is very limited. The current organization that has a corner on the market of technology in prisons is an organization called JPay, which is a subsidiary of Advente Technologies, which also owns telecom giant Securus, which has the largest share of inmate communications. So this is now covering both phone calls, which is what Securus does, and then JPay would cover emails. And those fees are kicked directly back to the families that have to pay these fees for these inmates to have access to and to use. In some situations, inmates may be able to create a bill, but those bills can really skyrocket, as I'll mention in an example in a moment. But this has a very key lock on what people who are incarcerated have access to educationally. And even then, with JPay's Lantern system, which is their LMS, which is how they manage the educational systems, can be very spotty, with videos and lectures being incredibly short for learning, assignments not being able to be well read on the tablet to really understand all technologies. And then if a kiosk goes down, they may be late for an assignment, which can cause a lot of difficulty. In case over the pandemic, there was one person who was working on a course and had to take one course to finally graduate for his bachelor's. The kiosk was down, and he actually had to have his tablet passed off to one of the correctional officers to be sent to another part of the prison to be downloaded. And it was only by the grace of that particular guard that allowed that to happen, that he was able to pass his class. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it. For example, with JPay, the average person who's incarcerated that chooses to work would make the average of 40 cents an hour, where JPay charges 25 cents an hour, or 25 cents for a stamp for an email. That doubles to 50 cents if that email goes over 6,000 characters, and then we'll charge two additional stamps for a video, so 75 cents if it's under 60,000 characters in a video, or a full dollar if it's over 6,000 with a video from the loved one. And that video from the loved one is only 30 seconds long. Over the pandemic, there have been cases where some incarcerated people racked up bills in 1 month of about $1,000 in just fees from JPay, which could be either watching movies, downloading music. At one point, they were even charging to read books, and it came to light that they were charging from the Gutenberg Project, which is a consortium of free books that are offered on the internet, and they were taking access to that and charging a fee for something that is otherwise free for everyone else in the modern world, which is crazy. But so with that 1 month bill, just 1 month bill of $1,000, that person working at 40 cents an hour to pay that single monthly bill would take 2,500 hours of work, where the standard hour of work for an American citizen at 40 hours a week, which is about 2,080 hours in the course of a year, means it would take 1 year, 2 months, 3 weeks for that incarcerated person to pay that particular one-time bill of $1,000. With With JPay itself, over the course of 5 years in the state of New York, and incarcerated with fees passed along to incarcerated people and their families, would have a payout of about $9 million. In addition to that, JPay stands to make $8.8 million through their educational system, Lantern, by leveraging the Second Chance Pell Grant that was reestablished by Congress in 2020. So they're making a lot of money and offering a product that is inferior. And so there has to be, again, with this white paper, looking at ways in which we can do better as a society. As an Adlerian working with Dr. Irwin, it was been a very interesting journey and experience in our own conversations that we've had over the couple of years, and more so focused with SJP, but then also just being introduced to different organizations and think tanks and meeting people through my own professional career in the Association of Talent Development, other people who are that work in adult education. Has really made an impact on me. In addition to my own family going through the criminal legal system and having a family member who is incarcerated, has been incredibly transforming and interesting. And, I think for reform and understanding the vastness of intersectionality barriers that are created for those who are incarcerated is substantial. The main of which, besides race, color, and creed, is that once incarcerated, you become a different type of citizen. You lose your rights to vote and other access to certain things, as noted in the 13th Amendment. And the barriers that exist when you put in race, gender, socioeconomic status, even type of crime, all of that weighs in and really creates a lot of barriers for success and increases the probability of recidivism. In the same way with dynamics of power, in this instance, the Department of Corrections and private organizations like JPay and Avante Technologies hold all the power and push the cost of that power onto those who are powerless, which is the people who are incarcerated and their families, because there are no other alternatives or options for technology, for access to communication, for access to learning, and that just takes a major toll. And so, studies have shown incarcerated people have access to good education that focuses on academic or vocational skills, with an emphasis on additional social skill building. Negative behavior decreases, hope and purpose increase, so positive psychology. And then this lowers the percentage or probability of recidivism and creates creates positive opportunities for people for when they return to their communities and the broader sense of society. In one of our conversations, Dr. and I were talking, and I was musing, and I go, Dr. Irwin, it really seems like, people are incarcerated, they're supposed to be wards of the state where, there's a social agreement that, the state will, take care of these people as they're serving their time to society. But instead of being wards of the state, it almost seems like they're considered to be consumers of institutional services where they just become money icons and ways in which to cash in. And Dr. Irwin goes, you are absolutely right. And it becomes a for-profit system that really can damage individuals and families in many, many ways. And so for this experience, really opened my eyes to, how can we make this better for people as a whole looking to get back into society. So in the development of my skill set and toolbox, I would say at this point, what I found really interesting in working with Dr. Irwin is being just introduced to so many programs that exist out there that are really trying to work on reducing recidivism through organizations like NJ STEP, Project Rebound, Unlocking Higher Ed, to collect and create change. Discovering groups like the Vera Institute, where I met Dr. Irwin through, and then through politics and work that I do here in Texas, coming across the Texas Center for Justice and Equality, and then also looking at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. All of these think tanks of people that are existing to figure out, okay, how do we work within the current constructs of the social power dynamics, and how can we create policies and work for change? And so really, I would say the skill set and toolbox that really kind of was developed for me was the power of community through individual relationships and just knowing people who are in the effort and fight for reentry education and prison reform, and then also realizing that there are larger groups that exist. So I don't have to be a lone voice working to create change on a holistic level that is sustainable. So some of the things that I realize that are needed is, innovate technology to replace Javel's APA Lantern LMS system and also tablet technology for better access to educational resources. So something as simple as partnering with Apple to get some of their tablets available for the prison system, and then partnering with Degree.com to get access to universities and colleges and universities, as well as development of psychosocial skills needed for reentry is pretty easy. Just collaboration, networking, and then just figuring out what resources are needed to make it happen. Then additionally, advocacy, again, on a national level, I believe is needed, which will be one of the arguments in the white paper, again, to develop that sense of collaboration with other leading universities, not only to provide, again, access to degrees, but also vocational skills. And then also, additionally, as I kind of mentioned, psychosocial skills needed for the incarcerated person to have the right skill set to function in society, whether it be additional behavior management classes, drug addiction classes, even to learning new technology and understanding, changes in that dynamic, to even looking at, geopolitical realities. So when people reenter society, they have a working knowledge of, okay, this is what's, going on in the world today. Like, for example, whatever where you lean politically, being politically informed as to what's happening in your city, state, country, is important, so they're not caught up with either fake news or misinformation, but they're able to understand, okay, I know about this particular, political issue, and cool, and able to move forward, and not be caught up in the wave of again, misinformation. And then really to develop community and coalition building, to develop the policy shifts that are needed to improve society as a whole through reentry education in this particular venue. So, an argument, my deliverable, my white paper is going to be really an argument for education. While going through journals and articles and looking at public policy statements for my research, it just really became that there's an immense benefit of leveraging technology to provide access for education for incarcerated people. Really, I've hit on this a couple of times, but that dual sense of looking at, providing early on education, early on access to technology that's good and functional, can really help someone who's in a very difficult situation and probably the lower point of their life understand and develop hope, and to understand and develop a plan of, when I do get released, here's the jobs I want to pursue, here are the things that I'd like to move to, and even, be able to have access to career coaching and other areas is particularly important, because we as a society are judged by how we take care of our most vulnerable, according to Pope John Paul II. And, incarcerated people are definitely vulnerable in that we are taking away their rights. They've done something that was not correct with society most of the time. And, how do we help them rehabilitate? Because if we don't, then it's going to be basically the Shawshank principle, where they're going to return back to society and recidivate and go back to where they were. So really, this white paper is going to look at, what if we thought differently in the United States on how we approach prison reform through education. In conclusion, we have a quote from Alfred Adler from 1925, where he discusses the criminal. And he really identifies the criminal as a person who, from an individual psychological standpoint, has a social problem that is beyond their ability to address. So, for example, if they need money and you're out of work, then that results to theft and or crime to meet those needs. If someone has trauma from the past that's unresolved but don't have access to mental health or medical care, will result to drug use as a ways of self-coping, self-medicating to cope. And so we then as a society should have a moral obligation to look at, how do we actually help these individuals of our own society, our own community, be able to get the right skills needed to fully enter society, and not just pay what we did in 2012 of $39 billion to incarcerate people across the board, and then additionally paying organizations over the course of 5 years like JPay $9 million to provide services that are inferior. So I look forward to my continued work with Adler, with Dr. Irwin, and the University of Iowa and other organizations to really look at answering this question and seeing what solutions can be provided. Thank you.